the Harper penthouse shimmered like a scene plucked from a holiday catalog. Every corner glowed with the golden light of opulent chandeliers, reflecting off the marble floors and the polished brass accents that lined the staircase. The Christmas tree stood proudly in the corner, adorned with ornaments that caught the flickering firelight from the grand fireplace, casting dancing shadows across the living room. Snow had begun to fall outside, settling in a delicate, glistening blanket over the city below, and frost traced intricate patterns across the tall windows. The faint sound of carolers drifted up from the street, a bittersweet melody that seemed almost cruel against the warmth of the scene inside. Evelyn Harper moved quietly between the decorations and the small pile of carefully wrapped gifts, adjusting the ribbon on a present for her son. 7 months pregnant, she felt the heaviness of her body, the exhaustion pressing into her bones, yet her face held a soft, glowing smile. Her hand instinctively rested on her round belly as she glanced toward her 4-year-old, Liam, who was happily engrossed in placing tiny ornaments on the lower branches of the tree. Every small giggle from him was a spark of joy, a fragile warmth against the cold tension creeping through the penthouse. Her eyes drifted toward the grand dining area, and her stomach sank. Daniel Harper, her husband, was laughing, too freely, too easily, at something Clara, his mistress, had whispered to him. They clinked champagne glasses together, the sound cutting through the room, loud and celebratory, yet cruel in its timing. Neither Daniel nor Clara spared a glance at Liam, at Evelyn, at the life they shared, or once had. A sharp pang of betrayal stabbed her heart. Evelyn felt the weight of isolation, a cold shiver that no fireplace could chase away. Her instincts screamed at her to protect her child from this toxicity, from the betrayal that hung thick in the air, more suffocating than the snowstorm blanketing the city outside. Evelyn's mind wandered back to the early days of her marriage, a time that now seemed like a distant, almost fantastical memory. She remembered the night she first met Daniel at a charity gala, the way his confident smile had lit up the room, the ease with which he made her feel seen, important, like she was the only person who mattered. He had been magnetic, effortlessly charming, leaning in close as he spoke with that low, warm voice that made her heart flutter. Their courtship had been intoxicating, a whirlwind of candlelit dinners, surprise weekend getaways, and promises whispered under starlit skies. Evelyn had believed she had found the perfect partner, someone who would be her safe harbor through life's storms. At first, Daniel had been everything a woman could hope for, attentive, devoted, always ready with a compliment or a small gesture of love. He had kissed her hand in public, sent sweet texts in the middle of workdays, and held Liam's tiny hands with pride and tenderness. Evelyn had felt enveloped in warmth and security, wrapped in a love story that seemed unbreakable. But subtle cracks had begun to appear, almost imperceptibly at first. There were secretive phone calls that Daniel would take behind closed doors, excuses for late-night meetings that seemed to multiply over time, and the occasional evasive smile that didn't reach his eyes. Each small lie had felt insignificant then, easily dismissed by the comfort of their seemingly perfect life. Now, standing in the penthouse, the memory of those moments felt like a cruel mockery. The laughter she had once associated with Daniel's affection now echoed from the room where he and Clara clinked glasses, a stark reminder of the betrayal she faced. The warmth of their past was gone, replaced by the icy reality that the love she had believed in was only an illusion. Evelyn's heart ached not only for the man she thought she had married but for the life she had imagined, a life now fractured beyond repair. The first light of Christmas Eve filtered softly through the frosted windows, casting a pale glow across the Harper penthouse. Evelyn moved quietly through the kitchen, the clatter of dishes and the hiss of the coffee machine punctuating the otherwise still morning. She carefully prepared breakfast for Liam, pancakes shaped like stars, small cups of hot chocolate with whipped cream, and a scattering of fresh berries. Her hands trembled slightly, though she forced a gentle smile, whispering encouragements to her son as he toddled around placing miniature ornaments on the lower branches of the tree. Evelyn's mind wandered even as she worked. She replayed the events of the previous evening in quiet frustration and hurt, yet she forced herself to mask her sadness. Liam's laughter, bright and innocent, became a balm, though it only deepened the ache of longing for the family she had imagined. Every cheerful gesture felt like a fragile mask over the growing tension that lingered like a shadow in the luxurious apartment. Daniel's absence was impossible to ignore. His phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Clara, his excuses thin and hurried, leaving a cold void where warmth should have been. Even the smallest sound from him seemed muffled, distant, as though the walls themselves were conspiring to amplify her isolation. Outside, the first snowflakes began to fall, delicate at first, then thicker and heavier, blanketing the city in white. The falling snow mirrored the obstacles she could already sense pressing in: isolation, betrayal, and an uncertain path ahead. Evelyn wrapped Liam in his tiny scarf and hugged him close, her heart quietly steeling itself. Whatever the day would bring, she would protect him. The calm of the morning was merely a fragile pause before the storm. By mid-morning, the penthouse had taken on a tense, almost suffocating atmosphere. Evelyn approached the dining area, where Daniel lounged in a velvet armchair, glass of champagne in hand, laughing at some private joke Clara had whispered. Her voice was soft but steady as she tried to bridge the widening gap. "Daniel, can we talk for a moment?" she asked, choosing her words carefully, hoping for a sliver of attention, a hint of acknowledgement. He barely looked up, brushing her off with a casual wave of his hand. "Not now, Evelyn. I'm in the middle of something," he said, his eyes immediately returning to Clara. The dismissiveness stung more than she had expected. Clara, seated opposite him with a triumphant smile, seemed to sense the unspoken tension, but Evelyn refused to let her intimidation show. Evelyn's gaze locked with Clara's for a moment, two women caught in a silent battle of wills. There was disdain in Evelyn's eyes, tempered with the restraint of someone who refused to stoop to the level of manipulation and deceit she saw before her. Clara's smug expression faltered ever so slightly, and Evelyn felt a flicker of power, small but undeniable, building inside her. Meanwhile, Liam tugged at her sleeve, oblivious to the emotional turbulence around him. "Mama, play with me," he exclaimed, reaching for her hand. Evelyn knelt down, scooping him into her lap, wrapping him in an embrace that conveyed both comfort and quiet defiance. She whispered soothing words into his hair, her maternal instincts shining through the hurt and anger she could not yet release. Daniel's neglect was glaring, but Evelyn felt something shift within her, a quiet, simmering strength. She would no longer let herself be sidelined. For Liam's sake, and for her own, she realized she could not remain passive. The first confrontation had left words unsaid, but the resolve it sparked was undeniable, a seed of courage that would soon grow into action. Evelyn sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, Liam curled against her side, his small warmth a bittersweet comfort amid the growing chill in the penthouse. The laughter and clinking of glasses from the other room had become background noise, almost unbearable in its callousness. Her heart ached not only from Daniel's betrayal but from the realization that staying would be allowing toxicity to infect Liam's childhood. A quiet clarity settled over her. She could not remain here, not for herself, and certainly not for him. Fear gnawed at the edges of her courage. The idea of leaving Daniel, facing the judgment of society, the cold night, and the uncertainty of raising a child alone, pressed heavily on her chest. Her mind raced with questions. Where would they go? How would she navigate the world without the security Daniel had promised? Yet beneath the fear, a stronger force arose: determination. She owed it to Liam to protect him, to shield him from the chaos and cruelty that had consumed their home. She moved through the penthouse quietly, gathering essentials. Warm blankets, coats, a few toys, and enough food and supplies for Liam were carefully packed into a sturdy bag. She made sure he was bundled in layers, checking that his little mittens were secure and his scarf wrapped snugly around his neck. Every small act of preparation strengthened her resolve, each movement a silent declaration that she would not be trapped by betrayal or fear. Outside, the snowstorm intensified, gusts of wind rattling the windows and blanketing the city in an unyielding white. Evelyn's pulse quickened, not from fear alone, but from the rising tide of courage and maternal determination. With Liam in her arms, she stood at the threshold, a figure of quiet defiance ready to step into the storm, carrying both vulnerability and unwavering strength. Tonight, they would leave. Tonight, they would survive. Evelyn stepped out into the night, the heavy snow falling in thick, unrelenting sheets. Each flake landed on her coat, melting instantly into a damp chill that seeped through the layers. Liam clutched her hand tightly, his small fingers cold and trembling, his cheeks flushed pink from the wind. The city streets, once familiar and welcoming, had been transformed into a slippery, white expanse. The crunch of snow under Evelyn's boots was deafening in the otherwise muffled world, each step a reminder of the treacherous path ahead. The wind whipped at her scarf, tugging it across her face, while her coat offered only partial protection from the bitter cold. Carrying a bag of essentials over one shoulder and Liam bundled against her chest, Evelyn moved carefully, her eyes scanning for icy patches that could send them tumbling. The streetlights cast a dim, yellow glow, reflecting off the snow and creating distorted, shifting shadows that made the city feel unfamiliar, even hostile. At every intersection, she paused, listening for the distant hum of cars, the crunch of tires in the snow, and the faint sound of carolers that seemed both comforting and cruel in their normalcy. Liam's voice broke the silence. "Mama, are we going to a new home? Will Papa come too?" Evelyn tightened her hold, smoothing back his damp hair. "No, sweetheart. It's just you and me for now, but we'll be safe," she murmured, her voice gentle, calm, though her own heart thudded with uncertainty. She masked her fear with soft reassurances, each word a small shield against the panic that threatened to rise. The snow piled higher with every block, forming invisible barriers that slowed their progress, mirroring the obstacles Evelyn had faced in her life, the betrayal, the lies, the isolation she had endured. Memories flickered in her mind, Daniel's smile in the early days, laughter in warmer, happier rooms, Liam's first steps, the echo of love that had once seemed unbreakable. Those memories fueled her determination, she would not allow them to be crushed under the weight of betrayal. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of wind, cold, and relentless trudging. Every labored breath, every aching step, was a testament to her resolve. Despite the exhaustion gnawing at her muscles and the snow seeping into her gloves, Evelyn pressed on. With Liam safe against her chest, she moved through the storm, each step forward a declaration of survival, of courage, of a mother's unyielding love. The city, blanketed in white, became both adversary and canvas, a landscape through which they would carve their path to safety. As Evelyn and Liam continued through the snow-blanketed streets, the cold seemed less oppressive when small pockets of humanity appeared unexpectedly. A shopkeeper, noticing the pair struggling with the weight of their bag in the relentless wind, stepped outside with a thick blanket and a thermos of hot chocolate. "Here, take this inside. You look like you could use a warm drink," he said, his voice kind, genuine, and free of judgment. Evelyn's lips curved into a faint, grateful smile as she accepted the gift, offering a quiet thank you while cradling Liam, who eagerly sipped the sweet warmth, his small hands wrapping around the cup as if it could shield him from the bitter world outside. A few blocks later, a neighbor spotted them from her window and opened her door without hesitation. "Come in for a moment," she urged. "You can warm up and rest before continuing." The simple gesture struck Evelyn with profound contrast. Here were strangers offering warmth, concern, and safety freely, while Daniel, the man who had promised to protect and cherish her, had abandoned them to cold and betrayal. The thought of his selfishness steeled her resolve further, strengthening the quiet embers of empowerment growing within her. Later, at a bus stop, the driver noticed her struggling with the snow-laden path and the weight of the child in bags. With a gentle nod, he waved them aboard, offering a seat by the heater. Each act of kindness, small yet significant, slowly chipped away at the fear and despair she had carried since leaving the penthouse. Evelyn felt fragments of hope returning, mingling with the grit and determination she had summoned to escape Daniel's betrayal. By the time they stepped off the bus, she was physically exhausted, but her spirit felt lighter, buoyed by these reminders that compassion still existed in the world. With each helping hand, Evelyn's resilience strengthened, her self-reliance growing, a quiet yet undeniable force preparing her for the next stage of their journey through the storm. From Daniel's vantage point, the penthouse was a glittering stage, and he played his part with practiced ease. Glass of champagne in hand, he laughed at Clara's flirtatious jokes, the sound of their merriment mingling with the soft crackle of the fire. The Christmas decorations sparkled, the trees' lights twinkling in rhythm with the cheerful music playing faintly in the background. He felt a rush of exhilaration, a heady mix of freedom and indulgence, oblivious to the world outside this bubble of luxury. Evelyn and Liam existed only as distant echoes, their presence irrelevant to the immediate pleasure of the evening. Yet, amid the laughter and clinking glasses, a faint prick of unease grazed his consciousness. For a fleeting moment, Daniel's gaze drifted to the empty spaces around the dining area, the space where Evelyn had sat, the chair Liam loved to occupy. A flash of guilt swept through him, quick and sharp, as if the cold winter wind itself had found a way inside. But he pushed the sensation aside, rationalizing it with rehearsed thoughts. Evelyn was strong, capable, and he had earned this night of indulgence. He dismissed the worry as unnecessary, an overreaction fueled by imagined morality rather than reality. Still, subtle tensions began to coil in his mind. What if she left? What if she took Liam and vanished into the night, leaving him alone with nothing but regret? The thought lingered, uncomfortable and persistent, but he quickly replaced it with the laughter and champagne, silencing it before it could grow. Even in his dismissal, Daniel sensed a shift in the air, an invisible boundary forming that he had once ignored. The tension, though unacknowledged, hummed just beneath the surface, a warning that the comfort of his indulgence was fragile, temporary. Somewhere beyond the warmth of the fire and the glittering lights, a reckoning waited, a confrontation he could not yet foresee, but could not ultimately escape. Hours later, Evelyn spotted a small inn nestled on a quieter side street, its windows glowing with golden light that cut through the white haze of falling snow. The sign above the door swung gently in the gusts, creaking softly as if welcoming them. Her legs ached from the trek, her arms felt heavy from carrying Liam and the bag of essentials, and a shiver ran through her body despite her thick coat. She hesitated only for a moment before pushing open the door, the warmth inside immediately wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. The smell of cinnamon, pine, and roasting chestnuts mingled in the air, pulling a sigh of relief from her lips. A kindly innkeeper approached, her eyes full of understanding and quiet concern. "You two look like you could use some rest," she said gently, leading Evelyn to a small sitting area by a crackling fire. Liam immediately perked up, shedding the layers of snow that clung to his coat and mittens, his face lighting up at the flicker of flames dancing in the hearth. Evelyn sank into a chair, exhaustion pressing into every muscle, but as she watched her son's laughter echo across the cozy room, a sense of peace began to seep into her chest. The physical warmth mirrored the first sparks of emotional reprieve she had felt since leaving the penthouse. She let her mind wander, thinking about what came next. Legal protections, new housing, emotional healing, and the task of shielding Liam from the memory of betrayal all weighed heavily, but each seemed more attainable now that they were safe, even temporarily. She told Liam stories of their adventures in a gentler, happier time, weaving small magical details into the retelling. His giggles and delighted gasps were a reminder that joy could still exist, even in the midst of hardship. For the first time in hours, Evelyn allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the quiet strength of survival. The storm still raged outside, snow piling against the windows, but inside, there was hope, laughter, and a flicker of Christmas magic. She realized that while the journey had been harrowing, it had also revealed her resilience and the unbreakable bond she shared with Liam. Together, they were safe, if only for now, but it was enough to fuel the courage that would guide their next steps. Daniel didn't notice the absence at first. The penthouse had grown quieter as the evening wore on, but he was too intoxicated by champagne and Clara's laughter to register the empty space Evelyn once occupied. It wasn't until he reached for her glass, a casual gesture in the rhythm of the evening, that panic prickled at the edges of his consciousness. The chair where Liam had often perched was vacant. The neatly wrapped gifts he had ignored sat untouched on the table. His stomach sank as a sudden, terrible clarity dawned. She was gone. And with her, so was Liam. The confrontation came in pieces, first a flurry of frantic phone calls that went unanswered, then terse text messages, and finally a chance encounter outside a familiar cafe, where Evelyn had chosen to rest with Liam while keeping her distance. Daniel approached, his voice a mixture of pleading and anger, demanding explanations, trying to reclaim control. Evelyn stood firm, her posture straight, eyes steady, and calm despite the storm of emotions inside. "Daniel," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering, "I'm done. I will no longer tolerate your lies, your betrayal, or the life you think you can control. Liam and I are safe, and you will respect that. Each word was deliberate, a declaration of independence she had gathered over the long hours of walking through snow, facing strangers, and surviving the storm both outside and within herself. Daniel's face shifted from disbelief to desperation, then finally to dawning guilt as he realized the permanence of her choice. For the first time, he felt the weight of the consequences his actions had wrought, the hollow absence of family he had taken for granted. Evelyn's quiet strength shone in contrast to his floundering. There was no shouting, no spectacle, just the clarity of a woman reclaiming her dignity, setting firm boundaries, and refusing to be complicit in her own suffering. In that moment, she embodied accountability and self-respect, breaking free from the toxic cycle that had threatened to define her life. Daniel's regret was palpable, but it could not undo her courage. The confrontation left him powerless, and Evelyn empowered, a silent testament to the strength born of survival and love for her child. Evelyn and Liam gradually adjusted to their new surroundings, a modest apartment tucked into a quieter part of the city where the sounds of traffic were muted, and the snow fell in gentle, uninterrupted sheets. The space was small, far from the grandeur of the Harper penthouse, but it held warmth, safety, and the quiet freedom that Evelyn had craved for so long. She unpacked their belongings slowly, arranging Liam's toys and books on low shelves he could reach, creating a sense of familiarity and comfort. The little touches, a framed photograph of them at the park, a favorite blanket, made the place feel like home, or refuge from the betrayal and chaos they had escaped. Every morning, Evelyn woke to Liam's laughter, a bright, unfiltered sound that reminded her why she had chosen this path. They brewed cocoa together, the rich, sweet smell filling the small kitchen, and Liam's tiny hands eagerly stirred the mixture, occasionally spilling a little and giggling at the mess. One afternoon, the snow outside had piled high enough for them to venture out. They built a small snowman in the courtyard, Liam's delighted squeals ringing through the cold air. Evelyn followed his lead, her laughter mingling with his, a sound that seemed to erase the lingering shadows of the past. In these moments, she felt a joy that had been absent for too long, fragile yet unbreakable. As she tucked Liam into bed each night, Evelyn allowed herself moments of reflection. The betrayal, the loneliness, and the fear had all left scars, but they had also revealed her resilience, her capacity for love, and her determination to protect what mattered most. She thought about the lessons she had learned, the necessity of self-respect, the courage to walk away from toxicity, and the quiet strength that comes from choosing survival over comfort. Each day brought incremental healing, a reminder that life could still hold beauty, even after heartbreak. Sitting by the window, cup of cocoa in hand, Evelyn watched the snow swirl in the streetlights, feeling a gentle optimism that had once seemed impossible. She knew the road ahead would hold challenges, but for the first time in years, she felt capable, empowered, and free. Her bond with Liam had deepened, their laughter and shared moments forming a foundation stronger than any betrayal. In that quiet glow, amidst snow and warmth, Evelyn understood that this was only the beginning, a life rebuilt on courage, love, and hope. Evelyn sat quietly by the window, cradling a warm cup of tea, the steam curling upward and mingling with the soft glow of the lamplight. Outside, the city lay blanketed in pristine snow, every rooftop, street, and park shimmering under the winter moon. The world looked peaceful, almost untouched, yet she knew the chaos of the past weeks had left its permanent mark on her soul. Liam, finally asleep in his small bed beside her, breathed softly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The sound of his slumber was a balm, a reminder that she had succeeded in protecting him, in carving out a safe space where love, not betrayal, defined their world. Gently, Evelyn slipped her wedding rings from her fingers and set them aside on the windowsill. The weight of gold and diamonds, once a symbol of love and promise, now rested as a cold reminder of broken vows. She sipped her tea, savoring the warmth that spread through her body, mingling with a deeper warmth, the satisfaction of reclaimed autonomy, the quiet triumph of courage. The life she had chosen was not easy, but it was hers entirely, free from manipulation, lies, and the hollow charm that Daniel had wielded for so long. Somewhere across the city, she imagined Daniel at a lavish party, champagne in hand, realizing too late the cost of his actions. His laughter would be hollow, his indulgence empty, and the shadow of guilt would press against him, a quiet reckoning for the life he had lost. For Evelyn, however, there was no emptiness, only a steady, profound sense of fulfillment. She had endured the storm, navigated the treacherous paths of betrayal, and emerged stronger, her identity unshaken, her dignity intact. As the snow continued to fall, Evelyn allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Her journey had been arduous, marked by pain, fear, and sleepless nights, yet it had forged a resilience she had never known. In the glow of the window, with her child safe and her future unclaimed by the past, she embraced the freedom she had earned. The city slept beneath a blanket of white, and so too did the life of betrayal, leaving in its place a quiet victory of motherhood, courage, and self-respect, a triumph that no one could take away.